Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. Thanks for being a part of my community. Listen, in this podcast, I've got something I want to share with you that has to do with getting more results in life, how to achieve more in life. And it all comes down to being clear about what you want, defining what you want. Right? You have to name it to claim it. And once you do that, all kinds of ideas and resources and people will come into your life that will help you on that path to achieve. And they will show up out of nowhere almost. And it's pretty powerful. So my staff and I, we just watched some old videos of me speaking at different places. And we found this clip where I had told a couple stories early on. And I thought I would share those stories with you. And it has to do with being clear about what you want and following your intuition. And when you do, things really work out for you. And by the way, you can watch this video on YouTube. It's there for you to watch, right? Just go to my YouTube channel, type in TJ Hoisington, and you can watch that video where I tell these three stories and how powerful they were. And let me tell you something. These stories shaped and confirmed to me the power of this principle that I'm sharing with you. And that is clarity and intuition. When those combined, wow, amazing things can happen. So without any further ado, let's jump into this speech, all right? When someone knows what it is that they want to achieve, it is unbelievable what doors will open to them because they're clear. All of a sudden, the universe somehow aligns the stars, and all of a sudden you notice someone, or a thought comes to you, or you realize an opportunity over here that takes you where you ultimately wanted to go in the first place. So get clear. I'll show you how that happened in my world a number of years ago. I was newly married, a year and a half or so. We had our first child. We were in our Utah home. My wife and our child was upstairs sleeping. About 11 o'clock at night, I was listening to an old tape series that I had ordered somehow, somewhere, gone to a shop, I don't remember where I got it, by a man by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And I remember listening to that tape at 11 o'clock that night, Utah time. And I was listening to the tape set, and here it is. I brought it on this trip with me so you could actually see. This was the actual tape set. I sat in my den and I listened to those 4 tapes. As I was listening to one of the tapes, I just glanced down at the other 3 and I noticed a phone number at the bottom of the tape. The thought came to me, I wonder if that phone number connects anywhere. 30-year-old tapes. This guy was teaching, Charlie Tremendous Jones was teaching in the 1960s and so forth, and even then when I looked at the picture, I thought he's probably 50 years old then. He probably wasn't even around anymore, my natural thinking, right? So I thought to myself, I wonder if that phone number connects anywhere. And I thought, oh, there's no way. And then the voice came back to me, call the phone number. I said, no, okay, I'll call it. I pick up the phone. I dialed the phone number. Remember when you dialed, right? I picked up that phone and it started to ring. No one answered on the other end. So I got ready to hang it up, and this voice, right before I hung up, said in a low voice, "Who is this?" And I said, "Who's this?" He didn't say anything, so I got the feeling, you know what? I better tell him who I am. I said, my name is TJ Hoisington, and I was listening to this old tape by a gentleman by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And the man on the other line, what did he say? He said, I am Charlie Tremendous Jones. I said, no way, you are the Charlie Tremendous Jones? He said, that's me. I said, it's 11 o'clock where I am. Where did I catch you? He said, Pennsylvania. I said, that means he goes, you're right. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, sir, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? He says, nope. I thought to myself, he's probably in his 80s. I thought, what are you doing up so late? I said, did I wake you? He said, no. I said, what were you doing? He says, I was reading one of the 5,000 books in my den. To make a long story short, we forged a great relationship years on end and so forth. Later, a couple years ago, I would call him annually like I would normally do, or semi-annually, or even more sometimes, depending on what business opportunity we were working on together. And I called, and the receptionist said, "He's not here. He went to heaven." I thought for a second, what? And then I got it. I felt horrible inside. I missed my last call with him. I loved those visits that I would have him as he would breathe life into me. Enthusiasm means to breathe life into someone. And I got to tell you, if you look at this picture here, Charlie Tremendous Jones was always known for having a bow tie. And 30 days after he passed away, guess what I got in the mail? A bow tie. Yeah, it's framed in my office. I cherish it today because he opened many doors for me. All because of this crazy thought that came into my head that says you ought to call that phone number. So it was 8 months later from that time when I was reading a book called The Joy of Failure by Wayne Allen Root. I was reading that book. It was a Saturday morning. I finished the book. It was 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning when many businesses are closed. Guess what I saw on the last page of the book? Printed on the last page was a phone number. What do you think I did? I called it. Guess who was the only person in the office that morning? Yeah, Wayne Allen Root. He told me, spent 15 minutes together. He told me some basic ideas on how I could get my book finished and how many pages it would need to be and word count and so forth. It was awesome. 8 months later from them, because I was clear about my goals. Don't forget what this is about. I was very focused and very clear. I was down here in Southern California. I remember listening to a tape at one point by Brian Tracy when he said that his offices were in Oceanside, not far from where we are right now. So it was a number of years ago, I happened to go on and find out where his address was on the internet. I thought this Friday morning I'm going to drive down to his office, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to get a tour of his office, right? I've been setting goals. It's all about coloring the limbic system, right? The brain with as much detail as possible, right? And I thought if I can go in his office, and I had been in Tony Robbins' office because I used to work for him and so forth, I thought to myself, the more detail I can get in my mind, the clearer I can get in my mind, the more fodder and ideas I'll have to create my own future office. So I show up. The receptionist is there. I said, "I'm TJ Hoisington. I was in the area, and I was wondering if I could just get a tour of your office." She looked up at me and said, "Wow, I've never been asked that in the 20 years that I've been here." I said, she goes, "I don't know if that's okay or not. I'll have to go find out." She says, "Hold on." She stood up, and she started to walk away. As she did, another thought popped in my head. I said to her, "Oh, before you go all the way back there, just a quick question. Does Brian Tracy ever come into the office?" She said, "Normally, no." I said, "You said normally in a peculiar way." Right? It's beautiful. When you know what you want, you hear things you otherwise would not hear. You tune in like a radio to a channel, and you get flooded with all kinds of data that will support and is in harmony with that channel. It's just like when you are responsible for an infant, and you're not the one that normally takes care of that infant. But when you're accountable for it on that night, because mom is away or something's going on, the whimper of that child will pull you out of a dead sleep, won't it? When you're the one accountable. Same thing happened. When she said that in a peculiar way, I heard it uniquely. I said, "You said normally in a peculiar way." She says, "Well, normally he travels 250 days out of the year. But it just so happens that he's here this morning meeting with the other partners." I says, "You're kidding me. When you go back, could you at least ask him if he'll come up and shake my hand? I would love to shake his hand." She says, "Let me see what I can do." And she goes to this long hallway all the way to the back. About 2 minutes later, the president of the organization, his partner, comes up and says, "Now, how can we help you?" And I said, "I would like to get a tour of your office." And I explained all the background and goal setting and so forth. He says, "I understand." But I said, "Now that I know that Brian Tracy is here, is it okay if I meet him and shake his hand?" He says, "Let me see what I can do." He walks back this long hallway, And about 4 minutes later, I see Brian Tracy, because I'd seen covers of his books and so forth. I knew what he looked like. He walked right up to me. He's a little taller than me. Even though I was really nervous, I felt like I was shrinking anyway, right? He looked down at me and said, "Hi, I'm Brian Tracy." I said, "Hi, I'm TJ Hoisington." He was a professional, like you could imagine that he would be. He said, "TJ, let me give you a tour of my office." I said, "You'll give me a tour of your office?" He says, "Absolutely." He took me to every nook and cranny of that office. I went to the shipping room. I went to the garbage room. I went everywhere. I even went to the bathroom. No, I didn't really. We ended back up in the foyer. I remember Jim Rohn in that early tape that I listened to as a 16-year-old. Jim Rohn always said, "Act when the emotion is high." Message to you. Doot, 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 doot. Coming out of tonight when the emotion is high is when you need to make that phone call. Coming out of tonight or first thing in the morning is when you need to go for that run. Coming out of tonight, okay, right? When the emotion is high is when you want to take action, because when you take action, you start getting feedback. That feedback creates momentum, which keeps the motivation and the feeling alive. So I remember Brian Tracy, I said, "Mr. Tracy, I've always wanted to write a book. I'm wondering, would you be willing to endorse that book when I'm done?" He says, "You know what? If you'll write the first 3 chapters and the table of contents, I would be happy to endorse that book for you, assuming I like it." I said, "Great." I'm telling you, I shook his hand. I left that day. I'm telling you, walking from his office out to my car, I didn't touch ground once. I was on cloud 9. I walked out of there thinking I'm going to be like Sylvester Stallone, and I'm going to write Rocky in 3.5 days without sleeping. I'm going to be back on his doorstep before I have to fly out of San Diego. The reality is, my friends, life happens, because that book wasn't written for another 4.5 years. Maybe at a human experiential level you can get that, you can understand that. Sometimes life just gets in the way, but if you won't give up on your dreams won't give up on you. I almost lost everything. I won't go into the full story. To the point, I had a car repossessed, my home was almost in foreclosure, so forth. My last bastion of hope was to be creative, lost my office space, and finally write that book that I had given hundreds of presentations on over a series of years. So I was creative. I sat in the back seat of my car in the Albertsons parking lot where I lived. For 2 months straight with my laptop in hand, I wrote. And today, that book, If You Think You Can, is all history today. If You Think You Can was written in the backseat of a car. I wasn't in the backseat of a car, though, mentally. I was in my palace. I was in a place that I believed. I went to a different world, if you will. It'd be Dennis Waitley that would later say, "You'll write your best book in your darkest moment." That was one of my darkest moments. But I didn't give up on the goal. And I'm here to encourage you, don't give up on your goals. Whatever your dreams are, if you'll stay after them, even if it seems like they come, it's spaced out a little bit. If you'll stay after it, I promise you, you can have it.
So what'd you think? Have you ever had experiences like that where ideas came to you because of a goal that you had, you wrote it down, and wow, it made a big difference in your life? I'm telling you, Charlie Tremendous Jones, one thing that he did for me was later on, he purchased 25,000 copies of my book, If You Think You Can, and provided them to a company called Amway with the Dream Builders Group. And I'll tell you what, that was amazing opportunity. I mean, I think the first year, that was part of the reason why we did so well that first year when that book came out and it became an international bestseller. A lot of it had to do with him and Brian Tracy and others who participated, all because I was clear about my goal and I acted on impressions that came to me. All right, I just advise you to do the same thing. All right, I wish you the best. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within. Hey there, thanks for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. I want you to know that I am grateful that you are a part of my community, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of my various podcast episodes. You see, it is my goal to provide you with those slide edge principles, strategies, and inspiration that can help you achieve your goals and your dreams. My one request is, if you enjoy my podcast in general, or you have listened to an episode that you really liked, could you do me a favor? It would mean the world to me if you could write a simple review, or if you could simply give me a star rating. I would really appreciate it. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within.
GreatnessWithin.com